It began with a moment of joy. A bright red car, parked under the golden rays of a morning sun. A gift meant to celebrate perseverance, hard work, and unshakable family bonds. For the Jones family, that car was a symbol of dreams achieved and sacrifices rewarded. For Officer Grant, it became an emblem of suspicion, bias, and disdain. In an unassuming neighborhood, two sisters found themselves thrust into a battle they never asked for, against forces larger than they ever imagined. This wasn't just a fight over a car. It was a collision of ideals between those who believed in justice and those who twisted authority for their own ends. What unfolded next wasn't just their story. It was a story about everyone who dared to demand accountability, who refused to stay silent, and who believed that even the smallest act of defiance could echo louder than the loudest cries of oppression. This is the journey of Maya Amara and Sharon Jones, a story of heartbreak, courage, and ultimately, change. The sun rose lazily over Crestwood Lane, its soft golden rays painting the rooftops in warm light. Birds chirped cheerfully, filling the morning air with their song. But inside the modest two-story home, at the corner of the block, an air of anticipation crackled like static electricity. Sharon Jones, a single mother who had spent years tirelessly juggling 3 jobs, had barely slept. Yet, the tiredness in her eyes was overshadowed by excitement as she stood in the living room, holding the keys to a surprise that had taken years to prepare. "Girls, come downstairs," Sharon called out, her voice trembling with uncontained joy. Maya and Amara Jones, identical twins with distinct personalities, appeared at the top of the staircase, still rubbing the sleep from their eyes. Their matching pajamas hinted at the close bond they shared, despite their differing temperaments. Maya, the calm and cautious one, took the lead, while Amara, the outspoken firebrand, trailed behind, her curiosity piqued by their mother's tone. "Close your eyes," Sharon instructed as they reached the bottom step. The sisters exchanged amused glances, but obeyed, letting their mother guide them out the front door. The warmth of the morning sun kissed their skin as they stepped onto the driveway. "All right, open them," Sharon exclaimed. Maya and Amara opened their eyes and froze. Before them stood a gleaming cherry-red luxury car, adorned with a massive blue bow that sparkled under the sunlight. Its polished surface reflected the sky, a mirror of perfection and promise. For a moment, there was silence as the girls processed what they were seeing. "Mom," Maya whispered, her hands covering her mouth. Is this real?" "It's yours," Sharon said, beaming with pride. She held up the set of keys, the metal glinting like a trophy. "Both of yours. You've worked so hard, kept those grades up, and got into your dream colleges. I wanted to give you something to show how proud I am of you." The twins' jaws dropped. Amara, usually the louder of the two, found herself speechless. Tears welled in her eyes as she launched herself into her mother's arms, followed by Maya. The 3 embraced tightly, their joy radiating outward like a beacon. The commotion didn't go unnoticed. Neighbors stepped out of their homes, drawn by the scene. Mrs. Rodriguez from next door clapped her hands, her infectious smile lighting up the street. Soon others joined, cheering and congratulating the Jones family. "That's the kind of car I'd dream of," a teenage boy muttered to his father, who nodded approvingly. Sharon's smile grew as she watched the twins inspect their gift. Maya, ever the responsible one, circled the car carefully, admiring its sleek design. Amara, on the other hand, couldn't contain her excitement, bouncing on her toes as she ran her hands over the luxurious interior. "It still smells new," Amara exclaimed, sliding into the passenger seat. Sharon chuckled, watching the sisters soak in the moment. Her heart swelled with pride, not just for the gift she'd managed to give, but for the young women her daughters had become. A few blocks away, in the shadowed interior of his patrol car, Officer James Grant watched the celebration unfold through narrowed eyes. His lips curled in a sneer as he observed the gleaming red car. "Look at them," he muttered under his breath, drumming his fingers on the steering wheel, parading around like they owned the place. His gaze lingered on the family's modest home, his mind already leaping to conclusions that confirmed his worst biases. "Probably Daddy's money," he scoffed, ignoring the obvious absence of a father figure and the unmistakable hard work etched into Sharon's demeanor. Grant's disdain deepened as he watched the twins wave at neighbors, their joy evident. His own life felt a far cry from the pure happiness he saw in theirs. And where others saw celebration, Grant saw a threat, a disruption of what he believed was the natural order. Back on Crestwood Lane, Sharon handed the keys to Maya, her hands shaking slightly with emotion. "Go on," she urged. "Take her for a spin." Maya hesitated, her practical mind already calculating the responsibility of such a car. Amara nudged her playfully. "Come on, Maya. You only live once." Maya smiled despite herself and slid into the driver's seat, adjusting the mirrors with care. Amara cheered as she joined her sister, and with Sharon waving proudly from the driveway, the car purred to life. As the Jones sisters drove off, their laughter mingling with the music playing on the radio, they couldn't have known that their joyride would soon take an unexpected and harrowing turn. The red luxury car glided smoothly down the sunlit streets, its engine humming like a satisfied purr. Inside, Maya gripped the steering wheel with cautious excitement, her eyes darting to the mirrors as she adjusted to the car's pristine feel. Amara sat beside her, practically vibrating with energy as she fiddled with the radio. "Try this station," Amara said, her hand landing on a familiar tune. The upbeat melody filled the car, amplifying the lightness of their first drive. "I still can't believe it," Maya said, her voice tinged with wonder. "It feels like a dream." "It's real, all right," Amara said, grinning. "And we're cruising in style. Mom really outdid herself this time." The sisters exchanged a look of shared gratitude, the kind that required no words. For years, they had watched their mother sacrifice everything to provide for them. This car wasn't just a gift. It was a testament to her love and belief in their future. A few streets over, Officer James Grant leaned against his patrol car, sipping coffee as he scanned the neighborhood. His shift had been uneventful so far, but his mood was sour as ever. The sight of the gleaming red car caught his attention again, the flash of sunlight bouncing off its polished hood, like a provocation. "Too good to be true," he muttered, tossing his coffee cup into the trash. His trained eyes followed the vehicle as it passed, the license plate searing itself into his memory. Grant slid into his patrol car, turning on the engine with a sharp growl. "Let's see where this goes," he muttered to himself, his hand instinctively reaching for the radio. Unaware of the eyes on them, Maya and Amara cruised through their neighborhood, waving to familiar faces along the way. "Look, Mrs. Rodriguez is out," Amara said, waving to their elderly neighbor, who stood on her porch with a watering can. Maya chuckled. "She's probably wondering how we managed to get something this fancy." "Let her wonder," Amara said with a wink. The moment was fleeting. In the rear-view mirror, Maya noticed the flash of red and blue lights. Her heart jumped. Amara?" Amara turned, her smile fading as she spotted the police car tailing them. "What's going on?" Amara asked, her voice tightening. "You weren't speeding, were you?" "No," Maya said firmly, her knuckles whitening on the steering wheel. I've been careful. The shrill chirp of the siren broke the tension. He's pulling us over, Maya said, her voice barely above a whisper. Amara turned fully in her seat, her brow furrowed. For what? I don't know, Maya replied, signaling as she pulled over to the side of the road. She kept her hands on the wheel, her heart pounding in her chest. Just stay calm, Maya said, glancing at her sister. Amara crossed her arms, her body stiff with defiance. Calm? He hasn't even told us why he's stopping us. Officer Grant approached the car with slow, deliberate steps, his hand resting on his belt. He tapped on the driver's side window with his flashlight. Despite the broad daylight, Maya pressed the button to lower the window. Good morning, officer. Is there a problem? License and registration, Grant said curtly, his eyes scanning the car's interior with thinly veiled suspicion. Maya reached for her wallet, her movements slow and deliberate, while Amara retrieved the registration from the glove compartment. This is a nice car, Grant said, his tone dripping with skepticism. How'd you get it? It was a gift, Maya said, keeping her voice steady. From your parents? He pressed, his eyes narrowing. Our mother, Amara interjected, her tone sharp. She worked hard for years to buy it for us. Grant smirked. Interesting. We've had reports of a similar vehicle being stolen in the area. That's impossible, Maya said, her calm demeanor beginning to crack. We have all the paperwork right here. Grant ignored her. Step out of the vehicle, both of you. Maya hesitated, her pulse racing. Now, Grant barked. The twins stood on the sidewalk, their arms crossed as Grant circled the car, like a predator stalking its prey. This vehicle matches the description of a stolen car, he announced, loud enough for nearby pedestrians to hear. I'm going to have to impound it. What? Amara's voice rose with indignation. We've shown you the registration. This is our car. Amara, stop, Maya whispered, grabbing her sister's arm. He's not listening? Grant radioed for a tow truck, ignoring the growing crowd of onlookers. You're free to go, Grant said dismissively. Go where? Amara demanded, tears of frustration brimming in her eyes. This is our car. Grant didn't answer. The tow truck arrived moments later, its driver exchanging a knowing look with the officer as they hooked up the car. The sisters watched helplessly as their prized possession was hauled away. The joy of the morning had evaporated, replaced by a cold, sinking feeling of humiliation. Maya pulled out her phone, her fingers trembling as she dialed their mother. Mom, she did, her voice cracking. Officer Grant pulled us over. He's saying the car is stolen, and he just took it. On the other end of the line, Sharon's voice hardened. He what? Mom, we showed him the registration, but he wouldn't listen, Amara said, her anger breaking through her tears. Listen to me, Sharon said firmly. Come home. We're not letting this slide. The sisters trudged home, their earlier excitement replaced by anger and fear. Their neighbors watched in stunned silence, their murmurs adding to the growing unease. Amara glanced back toward the empty street, her jaw clenched. This isn't over. Maya placed a hand on her sister's shoulder, her own resolve hardening. Number, it's not. With the car gone and the truth distorted, the Jones family found themselves at the beginning of a battle they never anticipated. But beneath their anger burned something stronger, a determination to reclaim what was theirs and to challenge a system that had failed them. Sharon Jones stared at the phone in her trembling hands, her daughter's words still echoing in her mind. Officer Grant pulled us over. He's saying the car is stolen. He just took it. Her fingers tightened around the phone as anger swirled within her. She had spent years preparing for this day, pouring every ounce of energy into building a better future for her girls. And now In a matter of minutes, their joy had been stolen under the guise of authority. Sharon took a deep breath, forcing herself to focus. "We're not letting this stand," she whispered to herself. Maya and Amara trudged up the front steps of their home. Their shoulders slumped. Their once bright morning felt like a distant memory, replaced by a heavy cloud of humiliation and disbelief. Sharon opened the door before they even knocked, pulling them into a fierce embrace. "Are you both okay?" she asked, searching their faces for signs of harm. "We're fine, Mom," Maya said, her voice subdued, "just confused, angry." "He wouldn't listen to us," Amara said, her words tumbling out. "We showed him the papers, but he didn't care. He just assumed we stole it." Sharon guided them inside, her expression a mixture of fury and determination. "We're going to fix this," she said firmly. "I need you to trust me." The girls exchanged a glance, sensing the steel in their mother's voice. Whatever she had planned, they knew she wouldn't back down. Later that evening, the Jones family gathered around the dining table, the air heavy with unspoken tension. Sharon had pulled out her laptop, her fingers flying across the keyboard as she opened an app of the twins hadn't seen before. "What's that?" Maya asked, leaning closer. "This," Sharon said, her tone calm but resolute, "is how we're going to fight back." On the screen, a blinking red dot moved steadily across a digital map. The girls stared at it, their confusion evident. "Is that the car?" Amara asked, her voice tinged with awe. Sharon nodded. "I had advanced security features installed when I bought it. GPS tracking, biometric locks, and a self-driving system. That car is smarter than Officer Grant realizes." Amara's eyes widened. "You mean we can control it?" "Not just control it," Sharon said, a small smile playing on her lips. "We can make sure he regrets ever taking it." Meanwhile, in a dimly lit lot on the outskirts of town, Officer Grant leaned against the red car, his arms crossed. The vehicle's sleek design glinted under the streetlights, its presence a stark contrast to the dusty surroundings. "Got yourself a real prize this time," the tow truck driver said, smirking as he handed Grant a clipboard. Grant grunted in response, scribbling his signature without looking. "Let's see what these girls were really up to," he muttered, opening the driver's side door and sliding into the seat. As soon as he turned the ignition, the dashboard lit up with a cheerful chime. But instead of roaring to life, the car issued a sharp beep and displayed a message. "Unauthorized driver detected." Grant frowned. "What the hell?" He pressed buttons on the console, but nothing responded. The doors clicked shut, locking him inside. Back at the Jones house, Sharon's fingers danced over her laptop keyboard. She had activated the car's security protocols, her daughters watching with bated breath. "Wait," Amara said, her brow furrowed. "Is he stuck?" Sharon nodded, her eyes fixed on the screen. "He's trapped. And now, the car is taking him exactly where he belongs." Maya gasped as the map updated, the car's route shifting toward the local police station. "Mom, that's genius." Sharon's smile widened. "It's only the beginning." Inside the car, Grant's frustration mounted as the vehicle moved on its own, obeying traffic laws with robotic precision. He yanked at the steering wheel, slammed his fists against the windows, and even tried calling for backup, but every attempt was met with silence or failure. A robotic voice emanated from the car's speakers. "Destination, Central Police Station. Please remain seated." "Damn it," Grant shouted, his face turning red as he pounded the dashboard. For the first time, his air of authority cracked, revealing the panic beneath. The next morning, news of the incident spread like wildfire. Video footage from the car's internal cameras had been uploaded to social media, showing Grant's frantic attempts to regain control. The clip quickly went viral, sparking outrage and conversation about abuse of power. Neighbors rallied outside the Jones house, offering support and sharing stories of their own encounters with Grant. A local activist, Malik Washington, approached Sharon with a determined expression. "This isn't just about your family," Malik said. "It's about all of us. People like him think they can get away with anything. We need to show them they're wrong." Sharon nodded, her resolve hardening. "Then let's make some noise." By evening, a protest had formed outside the police station, the crowd chanting for accountability. Maya and Amara stood with their mother at the forefront, holding signs and leading the charge. "This isn't just about a car," Maya said, into a megaphone, her voice strong despite her nerves. "It's about justice. For us. For everyone." Amara stepped forward, her fiery passion evident. "We're not backing down until the truth comes out. No one deserves to feel powerless in their own community." Their words ignited the crowd, the chants growing louder as more people joined. Inside the station, Officer Davis watched the scene unfold through a window. Unlike many of her colleagues, she felt a pang of guilt. She had seen Grant's behavior before, had heard the whispers about his methods, but had never spoken up. "This is bigger than one officer," she muttered to herself. "It's the whole system." Her decision to act was solidified as she walked toward her superior's office, a folder of evidence in hand. Back at home, Sharon, Maya, and Amara sat together, their bond stronger than ever. The battle ahead would be difficult, but they were ready. "This is just the start," Sharon said, her voice filled with determination. "We're not just getting our car back. We're going to make sure this never happens again." Maya nodded, her own resolve matching her mother's. "We'll fight, we're together." Amara grinned, her fiery spirit undiminished. "And we'll win." The Jones family wasn't just standing up for themselves. They were standing up for an entire community, and they wouldn't stop until justice was served. The night was eerily quiet as Officer James Grant sat in his patrol car, parked in a shadowy corner of the police station's lot. The events of the day replayed in his mind, his frustration growing with every passing moment. The red luxury car now sat locked in the evidence garage, its sleek frame a glaring reminder of the humiliations he had endured. He clenched his jaw, his hand drumming on the steering wheel. "What's so special about that damn car?" he muttered to himself, his voice low and bitter. "Kids like them shouldn't have anything that nice." He reached for his radio but stopped, his hand hovering over it. Something about the entire situation felt off, but his ego wouldn't let him admit it. He had control. He always did. At least, that's what he told himself. Back at the Jones household, Sharon stood by the kitchen table, her laptop open and glowing in the dim light. Maya and Amara sat on either side of her, their expressions a mix of curiosity and determination. "Are you sure this will work, Mom?" Maya asked, her voice tinged with concern. Sharon nodded, her eyes never leaving the screen. "The car's system is foolproof. It's already sent every bit of data to a secure cloud. Even if they try to tamper with it, we'll have the original files." Amara leaned forward, her eyes narrowing. "So he's trapped. But what happens next?" Sharon's lips curved into a small smile. "Next, we let the evidence speak for itself." Morning broke with a cacophony of noise outside the police station. Protesters had gathered, their voices echoing through the streets. Signs demanding justice waved in the air. The names Maya and Amara Jones emblazoned on many. News crews lined the sidewalks, their cameras capturing every angle of the growing movement. Inside, Officer Grant's morning had begun far less triumphantly. He walked into the station, his usual swagger diminished by the lingering embarrassment of being trapped in the car the night before. His colleagues exchanged looks, some smirking behind their hands, others whispering as he passed. Grant glared at them, his fists clenching. "Got something to say?" he barked, his voice sharp. Silence fell over the room, but the tension remained thick. Grant stormed into the evidence room, slamming the door behind him. The car sat gleaming under the fluorescent lights, its polished surface mocking him. Grant approached it cautiously, his heart pounding. He didn't trust the vehicle. An inanimate object shouldn't have made him feel powerless. Yet here it was, sitting smugly in its designated spot. He reached for the door handle, hesitating for a brief moment before pulling it. The door didn't budge. A familiar voice, cold and mechanical, came from within. "Unauthorized access detected. Security protocols engaged." Grant stumbled back, his face pale. The voice continued. "All actions are being recorded." Grant's eyes darted around the room, his mind racing. He fumbled for his phone, dialing a number with shaking hands. "Wilson," he hissed into the receiver, "we've got a problem." By midday, the Jones family's fight had gained momentum. Social media buzzed with posts and videos of the protests. Hashtags like #Justice for the Jones family and #Stop the Abuse of Power began trending nationwide. Activists from neighboring communities joined the movement, amplifying their voices. Sharon watched the scene unfold from her living room, her heart swelling with both pride and trepidation. Maya and Amara had stepped into leadership roles among the protesters, their speeches inspiring others to share their own stories of injustice. "This is bigger than us now," Maya said during a brief break, her voice steady despite the exhaustion in her eyes. Amara nodded, her fiery spirit undimmed. "We're not just fighting for our car. We're fighting for every family that's been silenced." Meanwhile, Officer Sarah Davis sat in her office, poring over a stack of files. The whispers about Grant's behavior had been circulating for years, but nothing had ever stuck. Now, with the evidence from the car, she saw a chance to finally expose the truth. Davis reached for her phone, dialing a number she hadn't called in years. "Captain Reynolds," she said when the line connected, "we need to talk." The tipping point came that afternoon, when Sharon activated the car's most powerful feature, its internal camera footage. The video, showing Grant's disdainful remarks and blatant disregard for the truth, was uploaded online. Within hours, it had garnered millions of views. "This is what we're up against," Amara said, during a live interview with a local news station, holding up her phone to display the footage. "This is the kind of abuse that goes unchecked every day, but not anymore." The interviewer leaned forward, clearly moved by her words. "What do you hope to achieve with this fight?" Amara didn't hesitate. "Accountability," she said firmly. "For him, for every officer who thinks they're above the law." Inside the station, chaos erupted as Internal Affairs launched an official investigation into Grant's actions. The video had forced their hand, leaving no room for excuses or cover-ups. Officers who had once turned a blind eye to his behavior now found themselves under scrutiny as well. Grant sat in the interrogation room, his confidence crumbling under the weight of the evidence against him. The head of Internal Affairs, Detective Alvarez, leaned across the table, her expression unreadable. "You've got two options," she said coldly. "Cooperate, or we dig until we find everything you've ever done. Your call." Grant's mouth opened, then closed. He was cornered, and he knew it. Back at the Jones house, Sharon, Maya, and Amara watched the news coverage with a mixture of relief and determination. The fight was far from over, but they had taken the first step. "Do you think they'll actually hold him accountable?" Maya asked. her voice soft. They have to, Sharon said. We won't let them do anything less. Amara's eyes gleamed with resolve. This is just the beginning. We're going to make sure the whole system changes. Sharon placed a hand on each of her daughter's shoulders, her pride evident. Together, she said, we'll make them listen. The sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows over the Jones family's quiet street. Inside their modest home, the tension was palpable. Sharon, Maya, and Amara sat around the kitchen table, their attention fixed on Derek's laptop. The young tech-savvy cousin's fingers flew over the keyboard, his screen glowing with lines of code and digital logs. This isn't just about Officer Grant, Derek muttered, his voice low but urgent. This is bigger, much bigger. Maya leaned forward, her brow furrowed. What do you mean? Derek turned the screen toward them, revealing a complex network of transactions, names, and encrypted messages. Grant isn't working alone. He's part of a system, a web of corruption that goes way beyond just him. Amara's eyes widened. You're saying there are more like him, more officers doing the same thing? Derek nodded grimly. Asset seizures, bribes, falsified reports. It's all here. And it's not just local. This network stretches into neighboring precincts. As the weight of Derek's discovery settled over the room, Sharon stood, her hands trembling slightly. This is what we've been fighting against, she said, her voice steady despite the fear in her eyes. But if we expose this, we'll be putting ourselves in even more danger. Maya looked at her mother, her determination unwavering. We can't stop now, Mom. If we let this slide, they'll keep doing it. To us, to others. Amara nodded, her fiery spirit ignited. We've come this far. We're not backing down. Later that night, the Jones family huddled together, reviewing the evidence Derek had uncovered. The list of names was long: officers, local officials, even a few prominent business owners. Each name was tied to suspicious financial activity, seized property, or unexplained transactions. This isn't just about greed, Derek explained. It's about power. They're targeting vulnerable communities, taking what they want, and covering it up. Sharon placed a hand on Derek's shoulder. You've done incredible work, Derek. But we need to be smart about this. If they find out we have this, they won't hesitate to come after us. The next morning, the Jones family woke to find their home vandalized. Spray-painted threats covered their front door, and their mailbox had been smashed to pieces. Amara clenched her fists, her anger boiling over, as she read the scrawled message, "Drop it or else." This is how they fight, Sharon said, her voice calm but firm. Through intimidation and fear. But we won't let them scare us. Maya nodded, stepping forward to stand beside her mother. They're trying to silence us because they know we have the truth. Word of the Jones family's fight spread quickly through the community. Neighbors gathered in their front yard, offering support and solidarity. Among them was Mrs. Chen, the elderly woman from down the street who had always been a quiet observer. They've been harassing my grandson for years, Mrs. Chen said, her voice trembling. But we were too afraid to say anything. Amara took her hand, her voice steady. You're not alone anymore. None of us are. Meanwhile, in the police station's break room, Officer Sarah Davis sat quietly, her eyes scanning a file she had borrowed from the archives. It was Grant's personnel file, and it painted a damning picture. Complaints of excessive force, racial profiling, and abuse of power filled its pages, all marked resolved or insufficient evidence. Davis sighed, running a hand through her hair. She knew what she had to do, but the weight of the decision pressed heavily on her. Speaking out against Grant, and by extension the department, would make her a target. But remaining silent wasn't an option anymore. That evening, Davis arrived at the Jones household unannounced. Sharon opened the door, her expression wary but curious. "I'm here to help," Davis said, holding up a file. "I can't stay silent anymore." Inside, Davis laid out the evidence she had gathered, her voice steady as she spoke. "Grant isn't just a bad cop. He's a symptom of a larger problem. There are others involved, officers, supervisors, even the captain. They've been covering for each other for years." Sharon crossed her arms, her gaze sharp. "And you expect us to trust you? After everything your department has done to us?" Davis met her eyes, her own filled with regret. "I don't expect your trust, Mrs. Jones. But I'm here because I believe in doing what's right. And I know you're the only ones who can bring this to light." As the night deepened, Derek worked tirelessly to compile the evidence into a comprehensive report. Davis provided additional files, her inside knowledge proving invaluable. Together, they uncovered a web of corruption that stretched far deeper than anyone had imagined. "This isn't just a local problem," Derek said, his fingers flying across the keyboard. "This is systemic, and we have the proof." The following day, the Jones family held a press conference on the steps of City Hall. A crowd of supporters gathered, their voices rising in chants of "Justice now" and "End corruption." Reporters snapped photos and jotted notes as Sharon stepped up to the microphone. "This fight is no longer just about my daughters or our family," Sharon began, her voice clear and strong. "It's about every family that's been silenced, every voice that's been ignored. We will not be intimidated. We will not back down." Maya and Amara stood beside her, their presence a powerful reminder of the stakes. As the press conference ended, a sense of momentum began to build. The evidence Derek and Davis had compiled was sent to Internal Affairs, sparking a full-scale investigation. Arrests were made, and the once impenetrable network of corruption began to unravel. Grant, sitting alone in an interrogation room, felt the walls closing in. His allies were turning against him, each one scrambling to save themselves. He clenched his fists, his mind racing. For the first time, he realized he was truly alone. Back at the Jones household, the family gathered around the TV, watching news coverage of the investigation. The names of implicated officers scrolled across the screen, each one a small victory in their fight for justice. "We did it," Amara said softly, her voice filled with both relief and determination. "We're finally making them pay." Maya nodded, a small smile on her lips. "But it's not over yet. We still have work to do." Sharon placed a hand on each of their shoulders, her pride evident. "Together," she said, "we'll see this through to the end." The air was thick with tension outside the police station as protesters gathered, their voices rising in unison. Hand-painted signs reading "Justice for All" and "End Corruption Now" waved above the crowd. The movement that had started with the Jones family's fight was gaining momentum, drawing attention from across the city. Maya and Amara stood at the edge of the crowd, their mother Sharon between them. Amara's fiery gaze scanned the growing assembly, while Maya's held a clipboard, collecting statements from others who had experienced similar injustices. "This is bigger than us now," Maya said, her voice steady but laced with determination. "People are tired of being silenced." Amara nodded, her fists clenched. "And we're not going to let them sweep this under the rug." Inside the police station, the atmosphere was starkly different. Officers shuffled through the hallways, their voices hushed. The growing public outcry had shaken the department, creating a palpable divide. Some officers, like Davis, worked quietly to support the investigation, while others huddled in corners, muttering about loyalty and betrayal. Captain Reynolds stood in his office, watching the protesters through the blinds. His jaw tightened as he turned to Officer Grant, who sat slumped in a chair. "They're making this a spectacle," Reynolds said, his voice cold. "We can't afford to let this go any further." Grant's face was pale, his usual bravado replaced by unease. "What do you want me to do? They've got evidence. They've got the media. I'm already neck-deep in this." Reynolds leaned forward, his tone lowering. "Then you make it messy. If the family looks unreliable, the public will lose interest." Meanwhile, back at the Jones household, Derek was working tirelessly at his computer. Lines of code scrolled across the screen as he pieced together the digital evidence linking Grant to a network of corrupt officers. "This is the smoking gun," Derek said, his voice filled with urgency. "These financial records show everything: bribes, illegal asset seizures, even payouts to cover up complaints." Maya and Amara leaned over his shoulder, their eyes scanning the screen. "This isn't just about Grant anymore," Maya said, her voice steady but tinged with anger. "This is about an entire system built on exploitation." Sharon entered the room, her expression a mix of pride and worry. "You're doing incredible work, Derek. But be careful. If they find out you have this, they won't hesitate to come after us." The following morning, the Jones family awoke to find their neighborhood buzzing with activity. News vans lined the street, reporters clamoring for interviews. The family's fight had become a national story, with headlines like "Family Stands Against Police Corruption" and "Justice for the Jones Sisters" dominating the news cycle. Amara, dressed in a bold red blazer, stepped out onto the porch, facing the cameras with confidence. "This isn't just about our family," she said, her voice clear and resolute. "This is about every person who has been silenced, harassed, or targeted. We're fighting for all of them." Maya joined her, her demeanor calm but equally passionate. "We believe in accountability, transparency, and justice, and we won't stop until those values are upheld." As the public support grew, so did the resistance. Anonymous threats began to pour in. Phone calls, emails, even letters slipped under their door. The family's resolve was tested, but they refused to back down. "We knew this wouldn't be easy," Sharon said during a family meeting that evening. "But we're stronger together, and we have the truth on our side." Across town, Officer Davis sat in a dimly lit diner, meeting with a reporter from the city's largest newspaper. She slid a folder across the table, her hands trembling slightly. "This is everything I've gathered," Davis said, her voice low. "Internal memos, falsified reports, even records of payouts. The public deserves to know what's really happening." The reporter, a seasoned journalist named Sarah Chen, nodded as she flipped through the documents. "This is damning," she said. "But it's also dangerous. Are you ready for the fallout?" Davis met her gaze, her expression resolute. "I'm ready. The Jones family has shown more courage than anyone in that department. It's time. I did my part." As the sun set, protests continued to swell. The police station became a battleground of voices, with activists, community leaders, and concerned citizens demanding change. Social media amplified the movement, with hashtags like #JusticeForJones and #EndPoliceCorruption trending nationwide. At the heart of the crowd, Maya and Amara found themselves surrounded by supporters. A local pastor approached them, his voice filled with encouragement. "Your fight has inspired so many," he said. "You're not just standing up for yourselves. You're standing up for all of us." Amara smiled, her fiery spirit shining through. "We're just getting started." Inside the station, Grant's allies were growing desperate. Officer Miller, one of Grant's closest confidants, paced nervously in a break room. "They've got too much on us," Miller said, his voice frantic. "If this goes to court, we're finished." Another officer, Thompson, leaned against the wall, his expression grim. "We need to find a way to discredit them. If the public stops believing them, this whole thing falls apart." That night, the Jones family gathered in their living room, reviewing the day's events. Sharon looked at her daughters, her heart swelling with pride. "You've both shown such strength," she said. "But this fight isn't just about courage. It's about perseverance." Maya nodded, her expression thoughtful. "We've come this far. We can't stop now." Amara, ever the fighter, clenched her fists. "We won't." The chapter closes with a dramatic twist. Late in the evening, Derek's computer alerts him to an unauthorized attempt to access the digital evidence he had compiled. He quickly blocks the intrusion, his heart racing. "They're trying to destroy the evidence," Derek said, his voice filled with urgency. "We need to act fast." The Jones family exchanged determined looks. The battle was far from over, but they were ready to face whatever came next. The courtroom was packed to capacity, a mix of reporters, activists, and curious onlookers filling every seat. The weight of the moment pressed down on everyone present as the case of Officer Grant entered its pivotal phase. Maya and Amara sat side by side at the plaintiff's table, their hands clasped tightly together under the table. Sharon sat behind them, her unwavering presence a source of strength. Derek, ever the strategist, occupied a seat near the front, a laptop at the ready, with any evidence that might be called into question. Across the aisle, Officer Grant sat with his lawyer, Harrison Mills, who exuded a cool confidence that belied the storm brewing around his client. Grant's face, however, betrayed his inner turmoil. The arrogance that had once defined him was gone, replaced by a nervous energy that made him shift uncomfortably in his chair. The prosecutor, Lydia Chen, rose first, her tone measured and powerful. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, this case is not just about a car. It's about power and the abuse of that power. It's about a system that allowed an officer to act with impunity, targeting innocent citizens because of their race, their age, and their success. Today, we will prove that Officer Grant didn't just cross a line, he obliterated it," Mills countered with equal vigor. "This case has been blown out of proportion by media sensationalism and public hysteria. My client acted within the scope of his duties as a law enforcement officer. Any actions he took were based on reasonable suspicion, not bias." The tension in the room was palpable as the jury listened intently, their faces giving away little. Maya was the first to testify. She walked to the stand with quiet confidence, her shoulders squared. As she was sworn in, she caught her mother's eye, drawing strength from Sharon's supportive smile. "Miss Jones," Chen began, her voice gentle, "can you walk us through what happened on the day Officer Grant stopped you and your sister?" Maya recounted the events with precision, her voice steady despite the emotion in her words. She described the joy of receiving the car, the exhilaration of their first drive, and the sudden dread when the red and blue lights flashed behind them. Her words painted a vivid picture of fear and humiliation. "What went through your mind when Officer Grant accused you of stealing the car?" Chen asked. "I felt powerless," Maya said, her voice cracking slightly. "No matter what we said or showed him, he wouldn't listen. He had already decided we were guilty." When Mills rose for cross-examination, his tone was sharp. "Miss Jones, isn't it true that you and your sister live in a modest neighborhood where luxury cars are uncommon?" "Yes," Maya replied, her tone unwavering. "But that doesn't mean we didn't earn it. Our mother saved for years to give us that car. Mills smirked, leaning closer. And isn't it also true that you were nervous during the stop? Couldn't that nervousness have appeared suspicious? Maya straightened her back, her voice firm. I was nervous because I was being accused of a crime I didn't commit. Anyone would be. Next was Amara, whose fiery demeanor contrasted with her sister's calm composure. She walked to the stand with her head held high, her confidence unshakable. Miss Jones, Chen began, how did Officer Grant's actions affect you that day? Amara's voice was steady, but her eyes burned with emotion. He didn't just take our car. He took away our dignity. He made us feel like criminals in our own neighborhood. Chen nodded. What would you say to those who claim Officer Grant was simply doing his job? Amara leaned forward slightly, her voice cutting through the courtroom. A job isn't an excuse to humiliate people. It's not an excuse to ignore proof or lie about a stolen vehicle. His job was to protect and serve, but he only served himself. When Mills began his cross-examination, he attempted to rattle her, but Amara met every question with fierce determination. You seem angry, Miss Jones, Mills said, smirking. Do you think that anger clouds your judgment? Amara didn't hesitate. I think anger is what drives change, and my judgment is crystal clear. The courtroom grew silent as Sharon took the stand. She exuded grace and strength, her voice steady, despite the heavy emotion behind her words. Mrs. Jones, Chen began, can you tell us about the sacrifices you made to buy that car for your daughters? Sharon described working 3 jobs, scrimping and saving every penny to give her daughters the reward they deserved. Her words painted a vivid picture of her love and determination. They earned that car, Sharon said, her voice breaking slightly. And I won't let anyone take away what they've worked so hard for. Mills, sensing the weight of her testimony, approached cautiously during cross-examination. Mrs. Jones, he said, isn't it true that luxury cars like yours are often targeted by criminals? Isn't it possible that Officer Grant was just being cautious? Sharon's response was measured but powerful. Caution doesn't give anyone the right to demean my daughters or ignore the truth. He wasn't being cautious, he was being prejudiced. As the prosecution continued to present evidence, including Derek's meticulously compiled financial records, the pressure on Grant mounted. Finally, under cross-examination, his composure cracked. You think you're all so righteous, Grant sneered, rising from his seat. You don't know what it's like out there. I did what I had to do to keep order. The courtroom erupted in gasps as the judge banged the gavel. Officer Grant, control yourself or I will hold you in contempt. But the damage was done. Grant's outburst was not just a moment of unprofessionalism. It was a damning admission. Outside the courthouse, tensions ran high. Protesters clashed with counter-protesters, their voices merging into a chaotic roar. The Jones family watched from a window, their hearts heavy but resolute. This is what happens when people fight for change, Sharon said softly. It's messy, but it's necessary. As the day's proceedings ended, Derek received an urgent notification on his laptop. Someone had attempted to delete files from the department's internal server, files that could further incriminate Grant and his network. They're trying to cover their tracks, Derek said, his voice filled with urgency. We need to act fast. The chapter ends with Maya and Amara standing outside the courthouse, staring at the crowd below. The fight for justice was far from over, but their resolve had never been stronger. The courtroom victory felt like a breath of fresh air, but it was fleeting. Outside the courthouse, a storm brewed. Reporters scrambled for sound bites, Protesters waved signs, and counter-protesters argued loudly. The Jones family left through the back entrance, escorted by Officer Davis, their temporary relief dampened by the knowledge that the fight was far from over. Sharon, Maya, and Amara sat in silence on the drive home. Derek, seated in the back with his laptop open, scrolled through files, his face tight with concentration. "Something's not right," Derek muttered. "I've been monitoring the department's database. There's been unusual activity. Someone's trying to bury files." Sharon's grip on the steering wheel tightened. "What kind of files?" "Anything that ties Grant to his superiors," Derek replied. "They're covering their tracks." When the family reached home, they found chaos waiting for them. A police cruiser was parked outside, and 2 officers stood on the porch, grim expressions on their faces. "What's going on?" Sharon demanded, as she stepped out of the car, shielding her daughters behind her. "Mrs. Jones," one officer began, holding a clipboard, "we have a warrant to search your home." "What?" Maya exclaimed. "On what grounds?" The officer shifted uncomfortably. "We received a tip connecting your family to recent vandalism incidents." Amara's anger flared. "That's ridiculous. We've been in court all day." Sharon's voice cut through the rising tension. "This is retaliation. You're trying to discredit us because we're getting too close to the truth." Despite her protests, the officers entered the house, rummaging through their belongings. Maya and Amara stood helplessly on the lawn, their neighbors watching from behind curtains. Derek quietly filmed the entire ordeal on his phone, his jaw set in grim determination. When the officers left, they handed Sharon a citation, listing charges of vandalism and possession of stolen goods. The accusations were absurd, but the damage was done. Within hours, local news stations reported the allegations against the Jones family, framing them as hypocrites in their fight for justice. The next morning, the Jones family gathered in their living room. Sharon paced while Derek furiously typed on his laptop. Maya and Amara sat close together on the couch, their expressions a mix of anger and disbelief. "They're trying to break us," Amara said. "They want us to back down." "But we won't," Maya replied, her voice steady. "We've come too far." Derek turned his laptop to face them. "They've messed with the wrong family. I traced the source of the fabricated charges. It leads directly to 2 officers in Grant's inner circle." Sharon stopped pacing. "Then we exposed them?" The family reached out to Sarah Chen, the investigative journalist who had broken their story. Within hours, she arrived with a camera crew, documenting the fabricated charges and the department's desperate attempts to undermine the family's credibility. The vandalism charges only strengthened the community's resolve. Neighbors rallied around the Jones family, organizing a vigil in their front yard. Candles lined the sidewalk, and posters bearing slogans like "Justice for the Jones family" and "Truth will prevail" were taped to streetlights. During the vigil, Sharon spoke to the crowd, her voice unwavering despite the tears in her eyes. "They want to silence us," she said, "but we won't let them. This isn't just about my daughters. It's about every family that has been targeted, every voice that has been ignored. Together, we're stronger than their lies." The crowd erupted in applause, their cheers echoing through the neighborhood. Maya and Amara stood beside their mother, their hands clasped tightly, as they drew strength from the community's support. Late that night, Derek called the family into the living room. His laptop screen glowed with lines of code and a spreadsheet filled with transactions. "I found it," Derek said, his voice trembling with excitement. Grant wasn't just acting alone. He was part of a network funneling seized assets into offshore accounts. The evidence was damning. It showed a clear pattern. Grant and his allies targeted minority families, confiscated their belongings under false pretenses, and sold the items for profit. The money was laundered through a series of shell companies, implicating higher-ups in the department. "This is it," Maya said, her voice barely above a whisper. "This is what we've been looking for." Sharon nodded, her eyes fierce. "We take this to internal affairs and the media." The next day, as the family prepared to meet with internal affairs, they received a chilling reminder of the stakes. Their front door was spray-painted with the words, "Keep quiet," and their mailbox was smashed. Maya and Amara cleaned up the mess, while Sharon called the police, though she had little faith in their response. Later, as they drove to the meeting, they noticed a black SUV following them. Derek discreetly filmed the vehicle, his heart pounding. "They're watching us," he said. "We need to be careful." The meeting with Internal Affairs was tense. Agent Thompson, the lead investigator, listened intently as Derek presented the evidence. "This is explosive," Thompson said, scrolling through the files. "If we can verify these transactions, we're looking at systemic corruption on a massive scale." But even as they discussed their next steps, Thompson's phone buzzed with an urgent message. "There's been a data breach," he said, his face pale. "Someone's trying to erase records from our servers." Derek immediately offered his assistance. Within minutes, he was typing furiously on his laptop, countering the breach in real time. His efforts paid off. The files were saved, and the perpetrator's digital fingerprints were traced back to Grant's allies. Despite the mounting threats, the Jones family refused to back down. Sarah Chen's latest article, titled "The Jones Family's Fight for Justice," went viral, shining a national spotlight on their case. Public opinion began to shift, with thousands of people across the country rallying behind them. That evening, as the family gathered around the dinner table, Sharon raised her glass. "To resilience," she said. "To standing up for what's right, no matter the cost." Maya and Amara clinked their glasses with hers, their determination renewed. As the family prepared for bed, Derek received a mysterious email. It contained a single sentence: "You're closer than you think. Keep digging." The chapter ends with Derek staring at his screen, his mind racing. Who sent the email? And what secrets were still waiting to be uncovered? The city awoke to the sound of change. Headlines blared across newspapers and screens. Corruption in law enforcement. The Jones family's fight for justice sparks sweeping investigations. The nation was watching now, and the pressure was mounting. Maya, Amara, Sharon, and Derek sat in their living room, scrolling through the avalanche of support pouring in online. Every message, every shared story from other victims added fuel to their resolve. The mysterious email Derek received had been a goldmine. It contained encrypted files linking not just Officer Grant, but several high-ranking officials in the police department to a series of illegal operations. From asset seizures to bribery schemes, the breadth of the corruption was staggering. Derek worked tirelessly, compiling the evidence and cross-referencing it with the department's internal records. The family gathered around him, their collective focus unshakable. "This isn't just about Grant anymore," Derek said, pointing to a chart he'd created. "This goes all the way to the top." Sharon nodded grimly. "Then we expose them all." Agent Thompson, now fully convinced of the systemic corruption, called an emergency meeting with his team. The evidence Derek had uncovered painted a damning picture, and Thompson knew they couldn't delay any longer. By noon, warrants were issued for the arrest of multiple officers, including Captain Reynolds, who had long been suspected of covering for Grant's misconduct. News crews camped outside the precinct as officers were led away in handcuffs, their faces pale and drawn. Meanwhile, The Jones family's neighborhood became a hub of activism. Inspired by their bravery, our residents began organizing town hall meetings to discuss police reform. Maya and Amara attended every session, sharing their story and encouraging others to speak out. "Change starts with us," Maya said at one meeting, her voice steady and clear. "We can't wait for someone else to fix these problems. We have to demand accountability." Amara, her usual fiery self, added, "And we have to protect each other. They tried to scare us into silence, but look where we are now." The applause that followed was deafening. With the arrest of Grant's allies, the department's leadership was in chaos. Acting Chief Rodriguez called a press conference to address the scandal, her tone resolute. "We are committed to rebuilding trust with our community," Rodriguez said. "This department will not tolerate corruption, and we will work tirelessly to ensure that justice is served." Sharon, watching from home, couldn't help but feel a flicker of hope. But she also knew this was only the beginning. As the investigation deepened, the Jones family faced escalating threats. Late one night, Sharon woke to the sound of glass shattering. She rushed downstairs to find a brick had been thrown through their living room window. A note tied to it, reading, "Stop or pay the price." Amara picked up the brick, her hands trembling with anger. "They're cowards," she said. "They think they can scare us into giving up." "They don't know us," Maya replied, her voice firm. "We've come too far to stop now." The family reported the incident to Internal Affairs, who increased their security detail. But the message was clear. The fight was far from over. The Jones family's story continued to resonate across the country. Communities in other cities began demanding investigations into their own police departments, inspired by the Joneses' courage. Social media was ablaze with the hashtag number, Justice for All, uniting people in a call for systemic reform. Sharon received an invitation to speak at a national conference on police accountability. Standing before a packed auditorium, she shared her family's journey, her voice steady but emotional. "We didn't choose this fight," Sharon said, "but we won't back down from it. This isn't just about my daughters or my neighborhood. It's about creating a world where justice isn't just a word, but a reality for everyone." Her speech received a standing ovation, and the momentum behind their movement only grew stronger. Derek's relentless work finally paid off when he discovered a hidden server containing decades of suppressed complaints against officers. The server, dubbed the Black Vault, was a treasure trove of evidence implicating not only Grant and his allies, but also city officials who had enabled their behavior. "This is it," Derek said, his voice shaking with a mix of exhaustion and triumph. "This is the key to taking them all down." He immediately turned the evidence over to Agent Thompson, who mobilized his team for a sweeping crackdown. The arrests that followed sent shockwaves through the city. Senior officers, administrative staff, and even members of the city council were implicated. The scale of the corruption was staggering, but the Jones family's determination had brought it all to light. News outlets covered the story nonstop, and the Jones family became symbols of resilience and hope. Maya and Amara were invited to appear on national television, where they spoke about their journey and their vision for the future. "This isn't just about punishment," Maya said. "It's about creating a system that works for everyone." Amara added, "And it's about making sure no one else has to go through what we did." One quiet evening, the family gathered in their living room, the tension of the past few weeks finally giving way to a sense of accomplishment. Derek, for once, had closed his laptop, and they sat together, sharing stories and laughter. "We did it," Sharon said, her voice filled with pride. "We stood up, and we made them listen." "But the work isn't over," Maya said. This is just the beginning. Amara nodded. We've started something big. Now, we have to see it through. The family's bond, forged through adversity, was stronger than ever. They knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but they were ready to face it together. As the chapter closes, Sharon receives a phone call. The voice on the other end is calm but urgent. Mrs. Jones, this is about your daughters. There's something you need to see. Sharon's face hardens as she listens, her resolve unwavering. Send it to me, she says. We'll handle it. The scene fades out, leaving readers on the edge of their seats, eager to see what new challenge awaits the Jones family. The courtroom was packed. Sunlight filtered through tall windows, casting sharp beams of light onto the polished wooden floors. The room buzzed with murmurs as Maya and Amara sat beside their mother Sharon, their expressions a mix of determination and exhaustion. Months of battling systemic corruption had brought them to this moment, a reckoning for Officer Grant and his web of deceit. Officer James Grant, the judge began, her voice steady. You have been found guilty of multiple charges, including abuse of power, illegal asset seizure, and conspiracy to commit fraud. Grant, seated at the defendant's table, looked smaller than ever. His arrogance had crumbled over the months of relentless investigations and public scrutiny. Now, he sat hunched, his eyes darting nervously, as the judge continued. In addition to your prison sentence, you are hereby sentenced to community service at the Riverside Youth Center, the judge declared. A murmur rippled through the courtroom. The irony was not lost on anyone. Grant, once a symbol of unchecked power, would now serve the very community he had wronged. As he was led away in handcuffs, Grant glanced toward the Jones family. Maya met his gaze, her expression unflinching. For the first time, he looked away first. With the trial over, the Jones family shifted their focus to rebuilding trust in their community. Sharon took the lead, meeting with local leaders to discuss meaningful reforms. Her vision extended beyond accountability. She wanted to create a bridge between law enforcement and the people they served. We can't just tear down what's broken, Sharon said at a town hall meeting. We have to build something better. The initiatives that followed included citizen oversight committees, mandatory bias training for officers, and increased funding for community programs. Maya and Amara played an active role, their voices lending credibility and passion to the cause. One of their first successes was a mentorship program pairing at-risk youth with positive role models from within the community. Amara, ever the firebrand, led the charge, organizing workshops and recruiting volunteers. This is how we change things, Amara said at the program's launch, by investing in each other. The events of the past year had shaped Maya and Amara in profound ways. Maya, always thoughtful and measured, decided to pursue a career in law. She enrolled in pre-law courses at a local university, her determination fueled by the injustice she had witnessed. Amara, in contrast, channeled her energy into grassroots activism. She joined a local organization focused on social justice, organizing protests and lobbying for policy changes. We make a good team, Amara said one evening, as they prepared for a community meeting. You'll fight them in court, and I'll keep the pressure on in the streets. Maya smiled. Mom would call that balance. At the Riverside Youth Center, Grant began his court-mandated community service. The first days were grueling, not because of the tasks, but because of the stares and whispers that followed him everywhere. The children he had once dismissed as troublemakers now watched him with wary eyes, their skepticism a mirror of the community's distrust. One afternoon, while sorting donated books, Grant overheard a group of teenagers discussing their struggles with school. For the first time he listened, really listened. Slowly, he began to understand the depth of his ignorance. By the end of his service, Grant wrote a letter to the Jones family. To the Jones family, I cannot undo the harm I caused, but I am trying to make amends. Your courage has shown me a better path, one I hope to follow for the rest of my life. Thank you for holding me accountable. Maya and Amara read the letter together. Amara scoffed, but Maya folded it carefully, her expression contemplative. Months later, the community came together to celebrate the success of their reforms. The Jones family hosted the event at the Riverside Youth Center, a symbol of their victory and the progress they had made. The red luxury car that had sparked their journey was parked prominently at the entrance, its sleek surface gleaming under the afternoon sun. A plaque beside it read, "A gift of justice, from adversity to advocacy." Maya, Amara, and Sharon stood together on the makeshift stage, addressing the crowd. Maya spoke first, her voice steady and clear. "This car was meant to be a celebration of our hard work," she said. Instead, it became a symbol of something much bigger, our fight for justice. Amara stepped forward, her passion electrifying the crowd. "But this isn't just our story. It's about all of you, our neighbors, our allies, our friends. Together, we've shown what's possible when a community stands united." Sharon closed the speech, her voice thick with emotion. "Change is never easy, but it's always worth it. Thank you for standing with us." The applause was deafening, and the atmosphere buzzed with hope and determination. The Jones family's fight inspired similar movements across the country. Communities that had once been silenced by fear began to speak out, demanding accountability and reform. Maya and Amara were invited to share their story on national platforms, from television interviews to university panels. Their message was simple but powerful. Change starts with courage. At one such event, a young woman approached them after their speech. "Because of you," she said, her voice trembling, "I'm not afraid to speak up anymore." Maya and Amara exchanged a look, their bond stronger than ever. "That's why we do this," Amara said softly. One evening, the family gathered around the dinner table, a rare moment of quiet in their busy lives. Derek, ever the tech wizard, had just finished presenting the latest updates to the Jones Justice Initiative, a nationwide platform for police accountability. "It's working," Derek said, his eyes bright with excitement. "People are using it to report misconduct and track investigations. This is only the beginning." Sharon looked around the table, her heart swelling with pride. Her daughters had faced unimaginable challenges, but they had emerged stronger, braver, and more determined than ever. "We've come so far," Sharon said, her voice full of emotion. "And I know we'll keep going." As the chapter ends, Maya receives a text from an unknown number. The message reads, "You've started something big, but there's more to uncover. Let me help." Maya's brow furrows as she shows the message to Amara. "What do you think this means?" Amara's eyes gleam with determination. "I think it means our fight isn't over." The morning sunlight painted the town in shades of gold, streaming through the windows of the Jones family's modest home. Sharon stood at the kitchen counter, pouring coffee as the aroma filled the air. Maya and Amara joined her, both dressed sharply in suits that spoke of a new chapter in their lives. "You ready for today?" Sharon asked, her voice tinged with pride and anticipation. Maya nodded, a determined glint in her eyes. "This is more than just a celebration, Mom. It's a statement." Amara grinned, the fire in her spirit shining through. "And a reminder that this town and others are never going back to how things were." The town square had been transformed for the event, adorned with banners and balloons in vibrant colors. A stage had been set up at the center, with rows of chairs filling the space in front. Community members, activists, and local officials mingled, their conversations punctuated by laughter and the hum of optimism. At one side of the square, the Jones family's red luxury car stood as a centerpiece, its sleek frame polished to perfection. A plaque mounted beside it read, "A symbol of justice and unity, dedicated to the Jones family and the community that stood together." As people gathered, a local choir began to sing, their harmonies echoing through the square. The mood was electric, a blend of pride and hope. When the time came, Maya and Amara walked onto the stage together, the crowd erupting into applause. They stood at the podium, their mother seated in the front row, her face glowing with pride. Maya spoke first, her voice steady and commanding. This journey started with a single injustice, one act that could have been ignored or accepted. But we chose to fight, not just for ourselves, but for everyone who has ever felt powerless. Amara stepped forward, her fiery energy captivating the crowd. This isn't just about what happened to us. It's about what we can achieve when we come together. Today isn't the end. It's a beginning. The audience rose to their feet, clapping and cheering as the sisters stepped back, their unity a powerful symbol of change. As the applause settled, Derek approached the stage, a laptop in hand. His face was a mix of nervousness and excitement. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, "it's my honor to introduce the Jones Justice Initiative." He connected his laptop to the projector, displaying an interactive map on a large screen behind him. This platform allows communities across the country to report misconduct, track investigations, and share resources. It's about transparency, accountability, and giving power back to the people. The crowd leaned forward, captivated, as Derek navigated through the platform, showing its features. Applause broke out again, louder this time, as people realized the potential impact of this tool. Sharon joined her daughters on stage, wrapping her arms around them. "This is what happens when a community stands together," she said, her voice filled with emotion. "We've shown that change is possible." The impact of the Jones family's fight rippled across the nation. Other towns and cities began implementing similar reforms, inspired by the changes in Riverside. The Jones Justice Initiative gained traction, with users from across the country sharing their stories and demanding accountability. National news outlets featured the family's journey, highlighting their resilience and the tangible results of their efforts. Maya and Amara became sought-after speakers, sharing their story at universities, conferences, and community events. One such event took place at a high school, where the sisters addressed a room full of students. "You have the power to create change," Maya said, her voice filled with conviction. "It starts with standing up, speaking out, and never giving up." Amara added, "Change doesn't come easy, but it's worth it, and it's always stronger when we do it together." Meanwhile, at the Riverside Youth Center, former Officer Grant continued his community service. Initially met with skepticism and resistance, he began to earn the trust of the children and staff through consistent effort. One day, as he helped organize a tutoring session, a young boy approached him. "Why do you work here?" the boy asked, his eyes curious but guarded. Grant paused before answering. "Because I made mistakes," he said honestly, "big ones, and I want to do better." Over time, Grant became a mentor to some of the children, using his experiences to teach them about accountability and the importance of community. While he would never erase his past actions, he began to find purpose in helping others. Back at the town square, the red luxury car was officially handed over to the local Heritage Museum. The curator, a dignified woman with a passion for history, addressed the crowd. "This car is more than just a vehicle," she said. "It's a testament to resilience, justice, and the power of unity." Maya and Amara placed the keys on a pedestal, the moment marking the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. As the event wound down, the Jones family walked through the transformed streets of their neighborhood. The changes were visible everywhere: community centers buzzing with activity, police officers engaging positively with residents, and a renewed sense of trust among neighbors. Maya turned to Amara, a smile playing on her lips. "We've come a long way." "And we're not done yet," Amara replied, her eyes gleaming with determination. Sharon, walking between them, squeezed their hands. "Whatever comes next, we'll face it together." The chapter ends with Maya and Amara driving through the town in their new electric blue sedan. The sun sets behind them, casting a warm glow over the streets they helped transform. Their journey had been one of struggle and sacrifice, but it had also been one of growth, resilience, and hope. In the distance, the Riverside Youth Center stood as a beacon of change, its windows glowing with light. The sisters exchanged a look, their unspoken bond stronger than ever. "Ready for the next chapter?" Maya asked. "Always," Amara replied, her voice steady and sure. The car disappeared into the horizon, leaving behind a community forever changed. As the Jones family's journey comes to a close, one thing becomes clear. Their fight wasn't just about one family or one town. It was about all of us. It was about the power of standing up for what's right, even when the odds seem impossible. And isn't that something we can all relate to? Now, it's your turn. What did this story spark in you? Have you ever faced a moment where you had to stand your ground, speak your truth, or fight for something you believed in? Share your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear your story. And don't stop here. There are more stories to tell, more battles to fight, and more victories to celebrate. Make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss what's coming next. Together, we'll keep uncovering the truths that need to be told and standing up for the justice we all deserve. Because the fight for change doesn't end here. It's just beginning. Let's keep moving forward, one story at a time. See you in the next chapter.